Part 16. Coal. My thirst for adventure not having been satisfied by going down a tin mine, I determined to see what it was like down a coal mine, but I found it more difficult than I expected to achieve my object. Every arrangement I made fell through at the last moment. So, to put in time, I went to stay at a lovely old manor house which had been turned into a hotel, with a very smart riding school attached. I rather fancied my riding when I joined there, but that soon passed. Everything I did was wrong. My stirrups were too long and my hands too high. I was too flexible in my seat. I may have looked a bit better when following their instructions, but they were no good for a long ride in rough country, and I wouldn't have had much chance, with my hands as low as they insisted upon, if my horse had bucked or stumbled. It is easy to spot a horseman who has done any rough riding, for they always keep their hands high and their reins and stirrups long. I looked at the immaculately dressed riding master and wondered what sort of a job he would have made of it, if he had had to ride down a steep gully, composed of loose stones, as I had so often done. Among those at the riding school was a youngish man with his private secretary. He was interested in divining, and much of my time between riding lessons was given up to teaching him the art. He had the gift to a small degree and was anxious to use it, when he returned home, in finding coal. His father owned a number of coal mines near Stirling and had bought an old castle there partly as a residence and partly because there was believed to be coal under it and its park. I told him I was sorry to hear it because I knew from experience that coal seams could have a very ill effect on people living over them. He then asked me whether I would be interested in going down a coal mine and experimenting on the seams. He apologized for not being able to ask me to stay at the castle, but his father was gravely ill. So I put up at a hotel in the town of Stirling. The castle was an enormous building with huge stables underneath the whole of it and a massive stone wall enclosing it and the garden. In one angle of the wall there was a lofty watch-tower, housing a big rusty bell, which was rung in the good old days to warn the shepherds and tenant farmers that the Highlanders were raiding the neighborhood, so that they could drive their herds into the safety of the castle stables until the raid was over. The grey stone walls must have withstood many a siege. The castle was charming and peaceful in its hoary age, and everywhere there were signs of enormous wealth. But great wealth does not protect its possessors from human ills. The owner of all this magnificence was desperately ill and his doctors were unable to check the progress of his disease. The son asked me whether I would test the room below that occupied by his father to see whether his bed was over a stream of water or a seam of coal. I had explained to him that the emanations given off by water or minerals could pass through 20 stories in a building and still be as powerful at the 20th as at the first, and could even be felt in an aeroplane. So I went to my young friend's study, which was the room below that occupied by his father, and started work. I found no underground water, but, what was far worse, I traced 2 coal seams at different depths. They gave every indication of being wide and thick, and their emanations were exceptionally powerful. They crossed under the spot where his father lay in bed. He persuaded his father to have his bed moved, but it was too late and he died shortly afterwards. It was only during his brief residence at the castle that his health had given way. I was anxious to go underground to see what coal seams, such as I had discovered, looked like, so arrangements were made for me to be taken down the mine nearest to the castle. The manager was instructed to look after me and show me all I wished to see. When we arrived at the mine we waited for the next shift of miners to come up and then entered the cage. The mine was very deep, and as we went down into the smothering blackness I panicked and clutched the nearest miner in terror. I was somewhat embarrassed to have my clutch so promptly and powerfully reciprocated. When we reached the bottom it reminded me of a picture of hell which I had seen in Brussels when I was a little girl. There were the lost souls at their endless labors and punishments, and there was the blackness of the pit. Everything was black, the walls of the roadways, the floor, the ceiling, the miners themselves and everything about them, while pools of inky water added to the gloom. As we were talking, the manager and I continued to walk deeper and deeper into that awful blackness. I tripped and would have fallen if he had not caught me, for I had stubbed my toe against a tram rail which I had not noticed until that moment. There were rails like miniature railway lines running along the roadways. Then we met a heavily laden coal truck drawn by a pony. I had heard of pit ponies, of course, but thought that humanitarian Britain had prohibited their employment long before. One would have expected it to have been done when slavery was abolished, but I am told that there are still 12,000 used in British coal mines. Incredible as it may seem, England imports coal from the non-pony mines of the United States, particularly in connection with the making of steel in the northeast of England, which is costing her many millions of pounds sterling each year. As money, devoid of sentiment or sympathy, seems to rule the actions of so much of the present-day world, the cost of the imported coal may convince England that machines and not ponies would be a better paying proposition, and lead to the freeing of these little prisoners of the underworld. End of part 16.